Hello and welcome to another office hour. And we got some topics, some heavy, some curious, and we've already been talking a bit. Now, on the in the in the chat, there's what's our favorite T-shirt conversation going. There's Ramones concert, and then there's 404 gender not found. Good stuff here. Anyhow, I believe we have a question about noun versus verbs. Would the person with the question care to elaborate upon the query?
Sure thing. So you've got a Midoriism that it's better to use a verb when referring to yourself in terms of your desires and your kink identity than it is nouns. So instead of saying I'm a dominant, you would say I'm engaging in dominance. Instead of saying I am submissive, you would say I'm partaking in submission, something along that line, which has been useful. But I was thinking today that I'm wondering why the same things don't apply or don't have to apply in other spheres. So for instance, if I'm engaging in baking, I can still call myself a baker, and that's usually fine. Or if I'm engaging in bird watching, I'm not going to come up. So if I see somebody engaging bird watching, I'm not going to look at them and say, you're not a bird watcher, you're just engaging in bird watching. Or, I would never say, you're not an artist, you're doing art, because it's a good way to get punched in the face, not in a fun way. So I was curious about what historically or for what reason do we need to make this distinction when it comes to kind of our erotic desires and our kink identities, of using these terms, and maybe if you wanted to expand a bit on that whole idea.
Really good observation and question. No one's asked me that. And about bird watching, since I live in the city, I'm bird watching. I'm not a pervert. Seriously, I have like 3 different binoculars because I live on a hill, and we have this amazing drama going on with all the birds, right? So seriously, I am there like with binoculars. I'm like, oh my God, the neighbors must think I'm like totally creeping on them. So no, not creeping on them. Yeah, but seriously, birds are really cool here. But okay, so here's my thought on this and why I insist upon the verb not noun. And for those of you who haven't heard, I talk about how, one is not a dominant, one engages in dominance. And to express one's desire in verb, and that is and I would love to hear others' thoughts on this, but from my perspective, because sexuality is such a sticky and stigmatized thing, and we don't, because it is considered, it's been pathologized for so long that if we identify ourselves as I am a dominant, there's the internal pathologization, there's whatever stigma that may be brought in. And also, I think there's a tendency, especially around the new frontiers of sexual discussion, of wanting to make things just black and white and simple. So when somebody thinks of baking, because it is a relatively common activity that does not have shunning, I think shunning is the part that doesn't have shunning, that if one says they're a baker, then there's a general assumption that there might be other facets to their life. Now, a baker can still be baking. I'm baking today. No, I'm not baking today. Go away. And yes, I am, one could say that, well, I'm actually watching birds, or I'm actually watching my neighbors. But I am a bird watcher. So that can be, and the question here was, are they going to be mutually exclusive, perving and bird watching? So that's that's my emphasis on it, because people want like quick, short answers. Also, that the nature of desire is fluid and flexing. So I want to emphasize on that. And I see a hand up, please. Thank you.
I have two thoughts, one of which is my favorite line from Angels of America, when Roy Cohn says, "I'm not a homosexual, I'm a man who has sex with men." And where I come at from the psychology point of view and the therapy point of view is the labeling. So if you say I'm a dominant, that may, are you a, dom-ly dom, or are you a soft dom? I think you can get into a more descriptive language. And also, if I think about diagnosis, like, are you bulimic or are you schizophrenic? Or are you someone who has bulimic tendencies or schizophrenic features? And I try to tend towards describing the features. I realize this is not so much noun verb, but it is also about, not what people are, but what they do. So the behavior thing, so, and this comes up with couples a lot, where it's like la 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 back and forth, where taking it out, it's like, no, they're not a bad person, they're just doing something that might be bad, or something to that effect. So
And yes, and what people do as opposed to are, and that's essentially my what I'm trying to say with the snappy little verb not noun. Same thing, right? Yeah. It's just one of those like Midori-isms that I can like throw out in class and gets people thinking. And I see a hand up. Go ahead.
All right. So for me, anytime like people ask the question, and I try to figure out like ways to like identify myself, whatever, I don't give a shit. Now I'm all like on your side with the verb not noun thing, but a lot of the reason why is because people try to pigeonhole you like really, 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 really bad. And because I've put on my profile before, like, I'm a masochist. I am. However, in my head, I don't get out of my top space ever. And so when people think of like masochists, they imagine people that are submissive or littles or some other headspace that has nothing to do with pain. Where I'm more dominant than anything. I just like sensation. So there's no easy way to quote identify without listing like an entire paragraph, or people being like, just look at me like with their head cocked to the side, like, that doesn't make sense. Like, you must be mistaken. But anyways,
I'm curious, have you taken my best kink advice class?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Possibly.
Best kink advice. Nobody's told you it's got a grid in it and it has like
Okay.
stuffed animals.
Then I don't think so. I'll need to.
Okay, so you might want to take that one.
Okay.
Because it is perfectly fine to put a short paragraph to one's desire. And if somebody's not willing to listen to it, they think they're going to listen to you during play.
That's true. Good idea.
Right. And if somebody goes, I've never heard that, tell me more. That's awesome.
Yeah.
As opposed to, you must be mistaken. I mean, come on. If I want that, I've got my, family of origin to turn to. So, like, yeah, why not have a small paragraph to go with it? King explained. Yes,
Thank you.
yes, the King explained thing. Yeah, so best kink advice. I think, do I have that in a video in one of the backlogs of the glorious backlog that is Patreon? I'm going to
I
turn.
don't think so. You did it for Boundless, so you don't have a recording of that.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so that's one you want to check it out. And yeah, a small paragraph. And I see a hand up, you know who.
Oh, I'm assuming that's me.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's funny that that's brought up, because I feel like as we're getting back into the world of going to events, I I keep on hearing people say you're not doing it right, and I'm like, what does that mean? I'm like, I went to a queer event, and someone said, looked at me, and they're like, are you queer? And I'm like, sure, if you want me to be, I'm queer. I don't know. I don't check boxes. I don't have a shirt that has boxes on it that you can check. And so, like, of course, the person that was hosting the event was like, oh yeah, we would consider Jay queer. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. What does it make you feel better that someone said that because I'm hetero white looking dude? And I'm like, but someone looked at me and said, well, you should really let people know. And I'm like, why? Like, does it really, does that make you feel better? I'm like, if I was wearing a mask and you didn't want me to wear one, does it really bother you? And so it's one of these things that I keep on hearing this, because I had another friend that went to an event that was a poly event, and they said, yeah, we're kind of looking for this kind of thing. They're like, oh, that's not the way you do poly. And I was like, there's a way? Like, there's ways? I'm like, wow, these are all really interesting things. I'm like, wow, I think we've come out of pandemic and there's a whole new group of people that are doing things correctly.
Well, orthodoxy is attractive to certain populations. Yeah, and what I do find is, after the after the rebels and the revolutionaries, you get the orthodoxy. So, yeah, exhausting. So, yeah, the noun versus verb, the describing the desire versus the identity, and why that might be different than baker or, yeah. When when somebody asks me about, well, oh, I actually got disinvited from some Discord because there was some POC Discord that I wanted, POC kink Discord that I wanted to join to support, right? And the Discord required me to identify by these standard label words. And to the moderator or the list owner, I said, well, do I have to? And they're like, yeah, you have to. I'm like, but I don't. And they're like, oh, are you new? No, I'm not new. And well, you have to identify. Everybody identifies. I'm like, I don't have to. I identify as me. And so I was unwelcomed. Like, okay, yeah. What do I mean by standard label words? Dominant, submissive, master, slave. Yeah, that kind of stuff, right? Yeah, as opposed to person wearing glasses. That's still a descriptor, yeah, yeah. Am I trying to be difficult? Yes, I'm difficult. I am a chicken flogging beast. Oh my God. I could. That would work. That would actually work. Yeah. So
I mean, if you're gonna say like I'm a chicken flogging beast, I think you're getting to like the orthodoxy versus orthopraxy type split of like, are you doing it in the spirit of the law or the letter of the law? Like, I mean, you want the letter of the law says you gotta, for this Discord says you gotta like identify via a sort of like title or something, and you're giving them a title. So
I think I mentioned this in a previous gathering where Robert Lawrence, Dr. Carol Queen's partner, when he joined the military, or drafted, had no choice on that, Vietnam, had, there was a part where state your religion for the dog tag. And he said, Frisbitarian. And they put it in there. So forever his dog tag said Frisbitarian. Brilliant. Pastafarian. Yeah, right. So yeah, I think the verb versus noun thing for me is that trying to like do an end run and inoculate against the tendency towards the simple and inhumane binary. That leaves room for nuance. And it also leaves room for like the person just said, are you, if somebody said, are you queer? Depending on the person, it might be, what are you offering? Would it be good for me to say I'm queer right now? Of course, it depends on how that conversation goes. Yeah, you're right, though. There's a lot of people coming into kink right now who unfortunately their only source has been online learning, which is better than nothing, but sometimes worse than nothing. Um, are you queer? It depends. Are you? Yeah. Shoo. Any further thoughts on the noun versus verb, or the drive towards identifying and labeling?
Yeah, thanks so much for that. I think to sum it up, it's though for some reason, I'm not sure why it became this way, but it's really when we talk about our desires and this need to label them seems exclusive to that. I can't really think of any other examples where people demand you specify who and what you are, and make it a rigid construct of exactly this is what you're allowed to be. I can be a baker and a parent and a freak in the sheets and anime lover, and nobody doubts that. But what is it about our own desires that could trick us this way? Why do we need to find a different language to break out of it? It's just something weird has happened in the multiverse that kind of bothers at this point.
Maybe it's because it's just a hot button issue that, the things that you don't talk about in public. It's like politics too, right? Sex and politics, right? Are you a Democrat or Republican? Are you liberal or conservative? And are you capitalist or not capitalist? And I think that's another realm in which the identifying and checking box comes into, right? Let's see. We don't talk about Bruno, right? Boxes can be very useful shorthand, but some groups and individuals lose sight of the person inside the box, and yeah, then it leads me to like thinking of, certain bondage cages and all that, but I digress. I see a hand up. Oh yeah, and diagnosis. Yeah,
I think
go.
that the parallel, I can't remember who brought it up, but someone who's speaking previously brought it up about like the parallel that I think of is like kind of about that, like, oh, are you queer? Are you not? I see it a lot in like, and again, this is, it's helpful to have terms to refer to something, but you also don't want the term to become a box. And this is one of those cases of like, in queer spaces, or more specifically, I guess, I mean, non-cis heteronormative spaces, which are not necessarily queer, like there is almost like a, I see it particularly for people who kind of like came into themselves, came like as a parallel, like coming out to themselves online, where it's almost, there's this like intense pressure of like in certain specific online spaces of like having all your labels like listed in your bio of like age, gender, sexual orientation. Are you alromantic, or like are you aromantic, or what are like listing like all the like types of yourself, like it's some sort of character bio, and it becomes something to like, I think, both hide behind, and also it's like nice mental shorthand. I think when the person was saying in the chat, like it's nice mental shorthand of like, oh, because you have this label, therefore we probably have these other things in common. But then it becomes very like confining, or then you get into like awkward discussions where it's like, oh, well, I thought that because you have this label, therefore that means that about you. And then you have to like have this whole discussion of, well, no, just because A doesn't necessarily mean imply B. And I think there's a kind of, I see a parallel to like a man who has sex with a man, or like men loving men or woman loving women, like the parallel of like that term to the like I engage in dominance or I participate in submission type thing, where it's more about like how you, the behavior that you have, and not necessarily being like, well, I am bisexual or whatever, because that label can mean so many different things to so many different people. And while you do want to like provide that paragraph of explanation, sometimes you also don't want to like prime people to think certain ways about you with the label that you're using. So I feel like it's a good way to have nuance.
Yeah, I also want to clarify to a comment in the side about a good comment here about is there a place for consensus label as a form of useful conventional shorthand? What I'm talking about, I'm not talking about identity. I am talking about activity. One can identify as I am talking the men who have sex with men, right? One can identify fully as I am a gay man, while another individual may say that I am a man who has sex with men. Identity versus activity. One can also say, I am a gay man and I have sex with men. I am a gay man, I have sex with men, women, and whatever consenting sentient being I can get my hands on. That can also happen too. So to understand identity language versus activity language, and for many folks who have had to come out of various different closets, to wrestle with identity versus activity have been something that many of us have come up against, whereas majority or predominant population have not had to, and equating activity with identity, and that becomes very easy. So yeah, identity language is powerful when it's, yeah, own it, right? But not all activities or desires are identity. And I may be an individual who has a strong, say, sadistic streak. I may choose to identify as an erotic sadist, or I may choose to identify as a pervert who likes doing pokey things, but not tonight because I'm tired, right? So difference between activity and desire. And the thing about the verb not noun is specific to how do we figure out what we want now and how do we communicate that? So that little Midori-ism comes out of how do we talk about our desires and plan a hot scene? So yeah, I'm a cis female who, God, he's moved off far and away, but there was a gay boy that I used to play with, and he's gay, and we play, and it worked. Did not come into questioning his gayness at all. But he also liked his balls beat. And apparently the other boys in his circle didn't quite do it at the level that I enjoyed. And as I like to remind him, I don't have a set, so I fundamentally can't care. Which was a line that I would say right in the middle, just about as I'm about to pull the trigger on the stun gun, which was like, you know, a head trip play. So, let's see. Yeah, so identity, activity, and one can have identity that is, and have an identity that may not necessarily match the activity and desire and may be frowned upon by the general society or the cultural context. That's when the friction happens. And we may come to question our own identities, but we don't have to. You know, my pal can be a full-on gay boy and play with a cis woman. His identity wasn't challenged, but he'd also done a lot of introspection around who the fuck he is. So identity versus desire. And there was a comment about how in diagnosis that there's the the languaging as well. I'd love to hear a little more about that. Okay, I'm definitely, there's some good 10-word descriptions going on here, but I'm not keeping up with it. All right, so does it, any other thoughts on identity versus action? On the 10 words thing, what I'm talking about 10 words is I'm supposed to write a 10-word little descriptor of me that goes with my photo for Dark Odyssey, which I just been booked for. They want a 10-word description. I'm like, I hate writing my bio as it is, much less a 10-word thing.
Can you do a cop out that's just like, I am so much, I am contain multitudes, I am so much more than a pithy bio? Like, can you do that?
Yeah,
And just stop at the 10th word.
yeah.
Midori, there are some excellent haikus in the chat that you might want to take a look at.
Okay, I'm so looking forward to this. Oh, thank you. Yes, if you come up with good 10-word, put it in the post here. This was one that I came up with, and with help of somebody else in the Patreon post. So that was something that I came up with, but I look forward to reading all of this. All right, so let's move on here. Oh, hey, let's see. Nice to meet you. Welcome to the room and look forward to seeing you at other things. Okay, and you too. Yep, and we'll record the rest of it. Let's talk about managing our feels and being in existential state as we're going from one crisis to another. It's not even like coming out of a crisis. We're going in from one crisis to another. And it might actually weave in nicely with the other thoughts about doing less and stepping away as being a good and humane thing when it goes against the American ideal and the puritanical work ethic. I don't know what accent that was, but it was something. All right, so what's worked for us around the, okay, question. Does it drive anyone else nuts when telling somebody that you're under a lot of stress or the world is shit and the heart is dark and the mind is dark, and then somebody says, oh, just relax and do self-care? Yeah, my self-care right now is stabbing you in the eyeball. Yeah. Yep. So yeah, I find that just a little not helpful. I see a hand up. You go.
Yeah, it's that absolutely is nerve-wracking. I had someone who said that to me. I was like dealing with a lot of things with my boys and dealing with all this stuff, having a 13-year-old who is finally being able to get back out in the world, that age, they really need to be social. And this person who has no children said to me, if you really just relax and go do some breathing exercises and all this. And I said, wow. I said, I would really like to put you on the front of my bike and ghost ride it down a hill right now. And they looked at me like I was like gonna tie him to the bike and do it. And I kind of wanted to, but you know me, I'm not really like that sort of.
Well, I mean, you might want to model a breathing exercise that involves a pillow on the face. Here,
whose breathing are we talking about? Mine or yours? I don't know. Yeah, no, it is. I mean, these moving out of these different realms is and changing in intervals of different things, like changing a new job in the middle of a pandemic. or dealing with crazy family nonsense during the middle of this. So it's like trying to find the balance has been really interesting. And and also having my partner, who I love and is amazing, had to freak out about their job moving to Florida. And it's like, no, Florida, not going to Florida, not going to happen. So when you're dealing with all the things and trying to balance everything out, you're like, what works? And I'm like, I think for me, being very patient has been really the defining moment for me, and not kind of like putting it all out there. And being patient and like doing the things I love to do has been a big thing. I mean, I love being on my bike and I love doing outdoor things. So that has been a savior for me. Like that has been a number one savior for my life in the last couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah. Outside thing. Yeah. Oh, and I'm reading from the side here. Breathing exercise like waterboarding. And somebody else said, for fuck's sake, it's like telling a depressed person, have you considered just being happy? And I think most people don't realize they don't have to provide a solution. There's usually 3 clear options. Listen to them, vent, offer a solution, or distract them with something else. Yeah, and there's a link that may be offered for comfort and support. Let's hope that we can get that. Yep, hand up.
Yeah, I think that like regarding the like, oh, have you tried do self-care, whatever, what I put in chat is like a lot of people, I catch myself doing this too. Where like a lot of people will when someone shares some like difficult thing going on in their life or something bad happening, their first impulse is to like, oh, how can I help? And then they just offer kind of unsolicited advice that can be completely just way off the map, and completely the wrong direction. And it's been a helpful thing both for myself and others to remind them that like, hey, there's 3 options here. Like we can either talk about it and I can just vent about it, or we can talk about it and I can offer you solutions, or do you want me to like do not want to talk about it at all? And I can like, I know you have this thing that's bothering you, but can I distract you with something else if that's what you want? And like both remembering to ask people that when they have like, hey, I have these heavy feelings, like here, they're here. It's like, well, what do you want from me? Like, how can I best help you? And then also when I'm like venting or feeling grumpy, like articulating to someone else of like, I don't want solutions, like I just want to vent, or like, can you show me like cute cat pics or something like that? Like meta communication is really helpful. And then also just like, I've found that the most helpful thing for me for like handling burnout, if you want to call it that, is like knowing myself and knowing what my actual limits are. I feel like I have to work at being in tune with my feelings, because my impulse is to just kind of bottle everything up. And then it's like someone asks me a question and then suddenly I'm just like crying because it's like, oh, I didn't realize that I was like operating at like, within 5% of my maximum capacity. I thought I was all good. It turns out I'm not. Like, I think being able to like check in with yourself, or at least being alert to like, hey, I seem to be getting really irritated over the fact that all the forks don't fit in the silverware, or maybe something else is going on. Like having that sort of self-awareness is really helpful. But obviously like navel gazing is it can get to be too much. Sometimes you can be too much in your own thoughts, but being aware of yourself enough to like check in with yourself and being like, wow, I am really having a rough time. Like, and then that's like the first step for me in like knowing what I can do next, because I can't do any of the other stuff that makes me feel better if I can't acknowledge that I feel garbage.
Yeah. I love that there's this flirtation going on in the chat as well. Hey, I see a hand up.
Oh, is it me? Yeah, like you said, acknowledging that this is a very real part of your experience, because ignoring it, that like, wow, I'm paying attention to all this stuff and it is making me feel a lot of things. I think that's a really important first step. Like, this is real for me. This is real what I'm feeling. I'm empathizing with all these humans and their experience. That opens, like, at least in my experience, the gateway to be able to take care of myself and to be able to take those next steps to be like, okay, yes, what I'm doing is real and what I'm feeling for other people is real.
Next hand.
So to speak to the cartoon that I posted, which is from Things Without Arms and Without Legs, it's two creatures. One says, I have a sad. The other one says, are you looking for solutions or comfort? And the first one says, I would like to be angry, and then sad, and then comforted, then adventure for solution, then giggles. And the other one says, let's start. Roar. And that's the way you do it, right? It's like you just be with the person who's right in front of you, whether you're a therapist or not. And give them what they want and need rather than what you think that they want and need.
Yeah, I love that cartoon. In the light of this and intersecting with my artwork, I put in an application for a residency, and the proposal that I put in was my dining room art piece, which involves getting together and shattering plates.
So good.
Yeah, and I'm really, really, really hoping that they'll accept it. It's in Oakland. It's incredibly somewhere between raging and joyous and all at once. And then I take the shards of it and make a sculpture out of it. And I read on the side here, I have another thing to add, burnout management, but don't want to talk too much if others have something to add. Yeah, hold on just a sec, on that. So the dining room, there's a link for it. Yeah, it's a communal activity where we break dishes, and then I take the shards and make a sculpture that for installation that may be emotionally and visually terrifying for a lot of people. But I'm really hoping to find a place where I can do that. I proposed it at the Liberty Museum in Philadelphia, didn't get it. I'm proposing it to the Real Time and Space in Oakland, really hoping I'll get it. Yeah, so, yeah, so go on about another thing about burnout management.
Okay, so this kind of ties into the talking, the pre-recording chat that we were having, and the topic that came up about like just doing less. So part of like after you feel your feelings, or like acknowledge your feelings, it's kind of like, well, what then? And I found that usually the like root cause is just I've signed on to do too much because I say yes to too many things. And like, well, there's something to be said as like saying yes to stuff as a way to get out of a rut that you've kind of stuck yourself in. You can also get yourself into a rut by saying yes to too many things and overcommitting and feeling like you just have too much to carry. And it's not just like I said yes to too much at work, but it's also like relationships. You know, you're carrying a lot of stuff for other people. They're coming to you for emotional support. And the book that I mentioned earlier that was super helpful to me was reading Laziness Does Not Exist, which is written by Dr. Devin Price. And it's basically kind of like an anti-capitalist, like, hey, you don't have to, like, your worth is not defined by your productivity. And most people think about their productivity in like a work sense, but it's also like your feeling of being driven to support people emotionally if they come to you for stuff, or your feeling of for me personally, there's an entire like the chapters are basically like different types of things, of ways that you can do less. Like, for example, there's one that's like you deserve to work less, which is like usually what people think of when like they're burnt out and overworked, is like your job or your volunteering or whatever. And then there's another one that's like your achievements are not your worth. And then the one that really called me out was titled, You Don't Have to Be an Expert in Everything, which is like about information overload. And like that's one way that I definitely say yes to too many things, where it's like I feel the need to be informed about a lot of things, and I have a to read like list of books that I want to read that's a mile long, and I'm always adding stuff to it, and I'm always saving articles that I don't have time to read now but I want to read later, and like the list just keeps getting longer. And it's like, it's okay to just not know stuff. You can just live in a mental void where you just don't know the news or like whatever stuff is going on. You don't have to be informed. And I feel like that's been for me really helpful, of just like letting go. Because I think that one of the ways that I compensate, like I'm normally a very information heavy person, that's my like natural tendency, but during the pandemic, like when you're staying at home alone all the time, like what do you have to do? Like all you just go online and get all your information online and just drown yourself in awareness of what do cases look like globally, and what about your, you know, other areas of the world that I'm not even going to be, and like reading about suffering in other countries. And it's just like you can turn that off, you don't have to participate. So like reading that book was also very helpful in like giving me other examples of other ways that I can say no to things and like reduce my internal expectations for myself. So it's like a very, like it gives more ways to say no to things, and a framework for like relaxing into yourself than just like work less. Because for some people, like you literally can't work less for financial or whatever reasons, like that's just not an option, but there's other ways you can do less.
So for the room, for anyone who has, I'd love to hear about anything, even small thing that we're doing less of. I see a hand up.
For me, it's limiting my time reading the news. But I did cave and got an Apple News subscription, which is about 300 papers, all for $10. And I could feel that either going
Danger.
really well or really badly.
Danger, Will Robinson, danger. All right, so dieting on news intake. Let's see, and I see on the side, lately I've been wanting to understand how Jen Psaki seemingly stays informed about everything. Perhaps an android. Let's see. What else are we in the room doing anything less of?
One thing I'm trying is just not to get too up or down about anything. And the way I'm doing that is just monitoring my breathing, monitoring my heart rate and reactions to things. So I've watched a basketball game and I used to get really enthusiastic, yelling at the television and getting really into it. But I said, no, I'm going to watch this and I'm going to keep my heart rate down. I have my Apple Watch on so I could track all of it. And just sitting there and something happened, you're like, oh yes, something happened. And something goes down. Oh, that would be disappointing for that. And just try to foster kind of a neutral space, neutral headspace that you can go into. And then you can start reading the news and not get too worked up about it.
Mm-hmm. What else are we doing less of? I see a hand up.
Yep. What I'm doing less of is tying my creativity to my schoolwork, because I am in art school, but I'm taking on like side projects. Like right now, I borrowed a scanner from school and I'm using recycled materials to create digital images. So like decoupling the schoolwork and the artwork binary and like just doing.
Good. All right. And I see from the side here, I am doing less emotional support for my mom. She wants to vent to me about her feelings about my siblings, and I can't listen to that. Good job. Good fucking job. That ain't easy. Oh my God. Okay. Well done. Wow. Wow. Yeah. And I see you're not going to grocery stores anymore. I get delivery. It's the best thing ever. It's a keeper even post-pandemic. Yeah, that's another thing of not doing much. Not just out of pandemic necessity, but looking forward, looking ahead in the changing pandemic landscape, because it ain't over. I'm choosing to travel less for the small gigs. And just, keeping it at larger events. And also with larger events, I've got the stage separation from people, so I feel a little more comfortable. And that way I can just see a lot of people. And it's just, if I'm gonna, there's a certain amount of emotional and physical wear and tear with being on the road, as some of you know. I might as well do that with 1,000 people rather than 10 people. And where the event actually takes good care of me. And I do get organizations saying, but we can't afford you. Lower your price. I'm like, I have 30 years of work. Can I value my work, please? Yeah. So that's the last thing I'm doing. However, big events that I am going to, yay, Ropecraft, the Dark Odyssey Fusion, which is the one in June, and probably Thunder in the Mountain. We're in negotiation on that one. So we'll see. So bigger events. But yeah, in the grocery, I've taken, quote, you don't have to attend every fight you're invited to, all the way to I don't have to participate in every conversation, unquote. I'm very exhausted by the conversation sometimes, so I'm letting myself walk away. Setting boundaries with certain people about politics. It went well, and Dad and I went out to dinner and hung out, and we weren't at each other's throats. Well done. That's hard. Not coming to Kingfest. I would like to. And when they have a budget, that they will. But they're recovering as well from pandemic. So when they cancel, support the Kingfest people, and then I'll be able to come up. So they can value my work. And you know what's cool about Kingfest is that we're actually straight up about, we want you, we can't afford, we can't afford you, and we want to be able to afford you. And I really appreciated that.
Oh, I have doing less. It was scary. I stepped away from social media for a whole month in November and December, and also I chose to do that this month. And it's scary because I'm an artist, and that's usually tied directly to how you make money. But I realized that that was like a big part of the fear that I needed to face. And I gotta say, I do recommend just totally deleting the apps and doing a month off if you can, just because of the way that it quiets your mind and quiets your soul, not needing to respond to so many other people and so much stimulus. Like, I heard somewhere that our brain can only handle like, what is it, 6 things at a time? And beyond that, like, our brains are like, nope, like I can't do it. So I gotta say, it was tough for me, especially as a queer person who was not in a community that had a lot of queer people that I could see face to face. But I do recommend it if you can step away from for a whole month, a whole week, 2 days, do it. Like, delete the app, just do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm reading from the side here. Oh, and hey, you snuck in the room. Hello to the person who wrote. A lot of what people are saying rings true for me. Pandemic enabled me to pause long enough to stop saying yes to everything. It was a pause long enough to help me change my habits of always saying yes. Yeah, and then holding 7 things plus or minus 2. Yeah. Yeah, that pause. Side question. Oh, no apology needed for arriving late. I ended up screwing up the time in the various places I posted, so I showed up at 4 instead of 5. My bad. How long will Tectonic be on display at Arcana? For those of you who are watching, Tectonic is my big old sculpture piece that's going up in San Francisco. Reception's this Saturday, March 19th, 2022. I am in San Francisco at the beginning of April and hope to see it. Assuming the original terms of agreement of the award stays, it's going to be up for a year. That might mean end of the year, or it might be 12 months since. So yeah. So come see. And it's a nice wine bar, and owned by a queer political activist who left Iran after being imprisoned. So go enjoy the space. They have music on the weekends. Yep. Oh, yay! You'll be at the thing this weekend. Oh, and for those of you who are coming this weekend, the owner of the shop, they're Persian, and this weekend is also Persian New Year. I'm just mentioning that So, say Happy New Year. I need to find some place I can get some Persian sweets to surprise them with. So I don't know where to get Persian sweets. I shall search the interweb. Yeah. And Arcana Tectonic. So that's a lot of work. Yeah, so it'll be up for a while. And I think some of you I'm going to be seeing on Saturday. Oh, excellent. Okay. Recommendations on that. Yes, Persian sweets. And if I can find a good price on it, I'll like bring a lot. Yeah. But hopefully I can find a good price on it. And yeah, I'm gonna need to wrap this up pretty soon. So any like final words on things you are doing less that you would like to keep doing less on that has been good for you? Because I think this is also part of the managing the trauma fest that we are living in this historic period. Honestly, I feel like I'm living in a Hieronymus Bosch painting sometimes lately.
Mm.
That would be more fun.
Yeah, I would.
The comment of I'd like to unsubscribe from living in interesting times, right? Yeah.
I mean, it is the Garden of Earthly Pleasures, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, one of my joys have been I got a like monthly subscription for like see all the movie I want at the local movie theater. And
Cool.
I love that. It's different than like watching media at home because I have to make the trip. I have to park the car. Then I'm in this like big black box in complete utter suspension of disbelief, except for when the Asian mother apologizes. And seeing all sorts of ridiculous movies, and at like a monthly subscription, it's like I'll see anything. I mean, practically anything. I went to see the Mark Wahlberg Spider-Man pirate ship, Antonio Banderas. What the fuck was the name of that movie? Uncharted. Total swashbuckling, completely like there are like two Spanish galleons that first of all survived the humidity of the Philippines, huh? And Spanish galleons that are discovered and then they're brought up in giant helicopters to be moved, and then there's like fighting of like pirates across modern pirates across the two ships as they're flying. I mean, it's total Aeroflin, completely over the top, absolutely nuts. Had a great time watching it, except there was one thing that drove me nuts: how they handled ancient document and medieval diary. Bare hand, touching this and like opening it and just no,
Midori, that hurts.
Yeah, flying galleons and things that don't rot in Philippines, and people who should have broken 15 bones that get up and fight and all that I can deal with. But touching ancient manuscript with bare, greasy, sloppy, unwashed and ungloved hands, and I was like driving me nuts. And my wife was like, stop it, because I'd be like, oh my god, no, don't. So how like in horror movies people are like, don't go in there. I'm like, don't touch the manuscript. Yeah. Right. Like I can watch everything else. And the swashbuckling, oh my God. It was entertaining, by the way, especially if you really lower your standards and just go for like entertainment. Yeah.
Did you watch the Sandra Oh like horror film? I want to support her, but I also really don't like horror. I'm easily scared, so I was like, I won't watch that.
Yeah, I it's funny. I'll write horror, but I can't watch it because I can like feel it. Oh, I mean, I want to be the character in the horror movie in the clown outfit going, "Ning, ning, ning, ning," but no, I can't watch it. It's funny. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that would be actually great. There's a comment on the side about help in getting the word out about my tectonic. Yeah, spread the word, please tell and to the person as well as anyone else, because I'm having this like inner 10-year-old is like, I'm gonna throw a birthday party and no one's gonna come. Anyone else relate to that feeling? I mean, knowing that it's completely unreasonable and yet I'm still having those like, I'm 10. Yeah. All right. So yeah, go see the stupid swashbuckling movie. I'm gonna go see the Michelle Yeoh. I'll let you know what Michelle Yeoh in the multiverse is like. Um, let's see. Oh yeah, okay, let's see. Oh, somebody posted the juxtaposed link. Can you put that in the public? The person who put the juxtaposed so we can grab that? Yeah. And somebody said the perpetual fear of events, no one will come. Oh my God. Yeah, I know, terrifying. I totally have that. This is why every year I do my annual dim sum where I get to see my dear, dear friends, which I haven't been able to. Hey, y'all, I'm going to have to stop the recording, but those here live right now, stick around. I'm going to wrap the recording. Okay. And for those of you who are watching, drop by sometime. We just jaw jack, you know? That is a term that I learned in the Army. It's very descriptive and somehow vaguely dirty. Jaw jacking. On that note, I'll see you all at another office hour. Thanks for watching the recording.